All right, we've started.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is our first meeting of 2024. Yay! It's a special meeting because we had to reschedule it because of Martin Luther King, right? Yes. Let me see. Let's look at the agenda. Okay, did we have any public comments? Anything that came in?
No public comments. I just want to note some attendance items here.
Sure.
We have a few guests here with us. Stacy here. Well, they can do introductions when they do their presentation, but Stacy with the City of Issaquah Sustainability, and then Kathleen, who is our Civic Spark intern, will give you their nice introduction. And then we are just missing Huma, who should be joining us shortly online. And then we have Maury Edwards, who has an excuse.
Okay.
And then we have Monica here. She's
Oh,
Huma, perfect timing. We're just saying hi.
Great. Okay, let me see. I'm sure that the last minutes are fresh in everybody's mind from October.
I'm not saying what, oh my God.
November.
Is it November?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes from November?
I move, this is Commissioner Fish, and I move that we approve the minutes from our November meeting.
Does anybody want a second?
Commissioner something? I second.
You second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, it's everybody vote to approve, say yay.
Yay.
Okay, it will be approved unanimously. Okay, and then our first agenda item is you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Stacy. So, I will hand it over to you, Nana, if you want to do any kind of introductions. Or you kind of did already.
Yeah, Kathleen, Stacy, go ahead. Are you able to share your screen though? Everything's set up okay for you? Yes. Okay, great.
And to start with the introduction, I'm Stacy McKinstry. I'm the city sustainability manager, and then I also staff the environmental board, which we've never had any joint meetings or much overlap with that board, but hopefully this year we have a few projects going forward that we may bring to you. Board. And then Kathleen joined us in September. She's a Civic Spark Fellow, which is a program of AmeriCorps, but typically the fellows are very focused on private work. So she has been working with us since September. Unfortunately, the Navy is going to pull her away from us in a week. But she's done a lot of incredible work this year with our climate plan implementation, as well as our climate vulnerability assessment. You got it tonight. Kathleen.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and excellent. Fantastic. So as Stacy said, my name is Kathleen Hillary. I am the Civic Spark Fellow. It is a program that offers an opportunity for professional development with municipalities and departments in states of Washington, Colorado, and California on various sustainability, climate, and adjacent topics. My purpose this evening is to describe Issaquah's climate vulnerability assessment, provide a high-level overview of what it found, identify key messages, and seek input on how to successfully reach community members with information and resources from the CVA. The city passed a climate action plan in 2021 that focused on several areas of climate adaptation and mitigation, including overarching climate actions, buildings and energy, transportation and land use, materials and consumption, natural systems and water resources, and community resilience and well-being. The ICAP is the strategic and coordinated roadmap for climate resilience in Issaquah, rooted in the best available science and forecasts for how climate change may impact us, and builds upon our community's history of sustainability and environmental stewardship for how we can respond communally to mitigate the causes of climate change, some of which you can see actions for that on the left, and adapt to current and future risks of climate impacts. Some of those actions you can see on the right. And in the middle are both mitigation and adaptation of potential actions. These potential actions in the ICAP were reviewed and selected through a multi-criteria scoring system weighted by impact, feasibility, affordability, equity, and co-benefits. It's meant to be a living document of targets, metrics, and actions, and will be updated in 2026. Now, why did I just spend so much time on that? Because one of the actions out of the ICAP is CR 2.1, which is conduct a climate vulnerability assessment. This allowed staff to understand the specific climate impacts that threaten Issaquah and strategies for enhancing community adaptive capacity, especially of vulnerable groups and municipal infrastructure. The ICAP is available online on Issaquah's website if you'd like to read any of the other items. The climate vulnerability assessment was performed by Cascadia Consulting and reviewed by city staff. It analyzed 4 big sectors: built environment, natural systems and stormwater, water resources and sewer, public health and well-being. And those 4 tie back to elements of the ICAP, as you can see underlined in green. Spread across the 4 sectors are 10 subsectors, which are listed. The graphic depicts the climate impacts to those associated sectors, including wildfire, heat, and consequences of changes in precipitation patterns. This graphic details relative vulnerabilities from high to low of each of those subsectors, accounting for a climate risk factor, which is the sensitivity and exposure to climate impacts, and adaptive capacity, which is the ability of systems, institutions, biodiversity, and people to moderate, cope, or adapt to climate change. Sensitive ecosystems and health and social services were assessed as the most vulnerable subsectors, while green spaces and tree canopy and sewer and systems were assessed as the least vulnerable. Let that sit with you folks for just a second. And this chart here demonstrates the composition of several vulnerable populations in Issaquah, including households with low incomes, youth and older populations, community members with disabilities, non-English language speakers or English as an additional language in the home, Black, Indigenous, and other populations of color. And then other vulnerable populations specifically identified in the CVA, but not listed here, include our unhoused neighbors or those who live in their vehicles. And there's a lot of information in this table too. Conducting the assessment offered staff insight to existing conditions and areas of improvement within the community. By communicating the results of the assessment and how elements of the ICAP address identified gaps and plans for future work, we would like to facilitate transparency, community inclusion, and allow individuals and family units to determine what preparations they need to build resilience for themselves and among their neighbors. Targeted communications provides exposure and education on the assessed vulnerability of sectors and subsectors, generates community discussion, and directs our neighbors to available resources and other preparedness tools in language appropriate to differing personal contexts and previous exposure to climate resilience topics. We want to communicate the findings of the assessment accurately and widely without being reductive. And we want to be honest and build awareness about extreme weather projections while avoiding fear and to create whole community climate resilience. Very briefly, I'll review what we presented to the Environmental Board to contextualize the feedback we received from them. These concept strategies are only a few among many considered so far and include an update to Issaquah's municipal website, a school poster or other similar tool, and some kind of community signage, notice, flyer, or otherwise. We're going to kind of fly through these mock-ups for more time for discussion at the end. But this is an example of a landing page where you could then link to the climate vulnerability assessment. In the mock-up, I've selected the emergency management site. And then here you can see what a possible climate vulnerability assessment website might look like, ensuring that we have links to resources for natural disasters, all of which would link to the same locations as those on the emergency management page, so that we're not crossing any information streams. Links to the actual CVA report to facilitate that transparency. It's a chunky document of 50 pages and a little bit of technical jargon. But for those in the community who are interested in the source material, we want to make sure that it's available. Other links to human services, local weather systems, and additional links as determined by staff or it's the communications team. This is a mock-up of a school poster. It does not have to say what it says, but the goal was to demonstrate a potential age-appropriately themed poster, engage children in topics that are difficult in a place where there's already structure to engage in topics that are difficult, and use it as a way to perhaps engage in a little bit of multilingual family outreach and to facilitate those learning pathways we encourage our children to have when they come home and tell their family units what they're doing at school. And then finally, community signage. The images here are representative of various hazard notice signs. The idea is to have something stationary within a community that provides a consistent reminder of, yes, I need to be prepared, I need to have a plan. But for this kind of hazard-related signage, we would work with Issaquah's emergency manager to ensure any such signs were appropriate to the area they would. And again, these are just 3 possible concepts among many others that have been discussed, including garden notices and other sorts of material to gain access to other members of the community who may or may not engage in online activity. The feedback we got from the environmental board can be summarized in 4 buckets. How to get the information, ensuring that we deburden our community members and that we use every avenue possible to generate maximum coverage, especially among demographics less online. The type of information, making sure it's the resources and the facts. The format of the information varied based on the physical and virtual community squares our community members use, and the tone, focusing on language choices, i.e., vulnerability assessment may not be clear, useful, or suitably informative for someone who does not engage in the day-to-day climate action topics. The goal is to keep the information and resources rooted in science, using honest, age-appropriate language to communicate the full spectrum of possible messages for lasting climate resilience among the Issaquah community. The environmental board suggested adding questions about extreme weather preparedness and other CVA-related questions to the citywide survey to maximize a potential metric to measure success. And success is difficult to measure in this case, and developing a neighborhood watch concept for resilience in high-risk areas. A quick review of what we were hoping to communicate, noting that success is preparedness as part of community climate resilience. 100% coverage of all of our neighbors, including vulnerable populations, understanding what the physical vulnerabilities and potential impacts are to Issaquah, as well as our neighbors and ourselves, and that people and their neighbors feel prepared to meet those vulnerabilities and know where the resources are, what the resources are, and feel comfortable explaining to others how to access those resources. Our next steps are to provide these communications messages as well as feedback from your commission tonight, the environmental board to the equity board through a memo. because I will not be here. I will be off with Navy, publishing the CV report and developing those communications tools based on the robust feedback that we hope to get. So our discussion questions for you tonight after that lengthy introduction is, what suggestions do you have for reaching our neighbors, especially those vulnerable among us? And how have you successfully reached community members?
Wow.
I see Huma has her hand raised. Huma, do you want to take yourself off camera or put yourself on camera and unmute
Sure.
if you feel comfortable?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that presentation. As you were talking about communications to different groups, looking at your student poster, I heard you mention something about specialized jargon. It just got me thinking about how newspapers, popular materials like novels, I think TV Guide, these are all written at a school age level. I can't remember if it's middle school or 9th, 10th grade level English, so that it can be more accessible. So as I was looking at your school poster, I just thought maybe it shouldn't just be thought about or compartmentalized as a school poster for children, because that may truly be the language level of so many people in our community. And that's not just to talk about English language learners. Sometimes geography matters. So for example, if I think about my family, they're fluent in English. They learned English along with our native language when they were growing up. But at the same time, some of this jargon or American colloquialisms can be lost on them. So sometimes it's not even a matter of like fluency. It's just a matter of geography and getting through to people. So that was my feedback for language and communications, is that maybe instead of thinking about it in a really compartmentalized way, we should think about like, okay, well, what does a school poster mean? What level is it really? And can it be applied more broadly to our community and go further that way? And then as far as reaching community members, the success I've had just in small little endeavors has been to pound the pavement and talk to people. So I wonder if there can be a campaign of volunteers who canvass and speak to people who hang out at places like the senior center and provide information and just build those little relationships to get the word out. That's all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Numa. I'm just going to piggyback on what she said. Another place to reach what we're calling, some vulnerable community members would be Issaquah Community Hall. I don't know if you know where that is. Yeah, but that's where Catholic Community Services hosts free dinners every night of the week for anybody that wants it, and free lunches on Thursdays. And so, you get a lot of people of lower economic status there. I mean, you could get you don't have to be lower economic, but you get people there that might be the only meal they're going to have for the day. So, and again, I guess it would go back to what Huma was saying about you would have to have a team of people that might want to just hang out and talk to people. Or you could put posters up. I'm sure you could put posters up at Issaquah Community Hall. You guys are in charge of that space, right?
So it depends on what you define we. So the city, it's a city-owned facility. So our facilities team is in charge of the facility. On our end in human services, we've been in connection with the organizations that use the space and the groups that use the space there. So actually, Stacy and I have been in touch when they worked on the vulnerability assessment. We had sometimes when we were connecting with folks there.
Yeah.
So that's why, sorry, in terms of like in charge.
I'm thinking if somebody wanted to hang a poster on the wall.
Oh, yes, we can help with that. And organizations and the groups there are very open to do that. Yes, for sure.
I immediately thought of is it called Cultural Bridges, the magazine that is distributed or is available online, multiple languages. I was trying to think of existing resources that we can, I don't want to say piggyback on, but I don't think there's a need necessarily to reinvent anything. I think there are some really good resources already available.
Well, and what about, the circle? Okay, remind me, not,
Licia.
yes,
Yeah, Licia.
yeah, okay, you're familiar. Yeah, you know, she deals with vulnerable populations pretty much all the time. Yeah.
Great idea.
Save the food, yeah, I agree.
Food bank, of course. Right, yeah.
Great ideas, commissioners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to give like an experience talking about like what I've experienced in my school and what I've seen other students have. So there's been I've seen that in our classes, we've slowly been integrating sustainability like into the course where there'd be specific units, especially in sciences. And what's really good is that in Skyline, we have Pine Lake, we had a specific project where in our physics class, you'd learn about all of this environmental health things. So you learn about sustainability and climate change and all these problems that have been happening. And then you actually like use parts of the community to like make up your own sort of environmental project to help it. And one of the things would be to piggyback off that and maybe even give students like the ability to actually implement such of these projects instead of just like contemplating them, being able to actually like implement them. And piggybacking off of what Mrs. Fish said, I think there's a lot of already great resources. However, we need to increase the advocacy to what's there. Like, for example, again, going back into my physics class, I saw these like amazing resources of like, for example, Puget Sound Energy had this website that had just like multiple different programs that they had for people that are using their energy. And it's like, you can pay like $2 extra a month on your bill to make sure that it's confirmed that they're using sustainable sourcing, or to make sure that they're using electrics or things like that to use more sustainable energy sources. And I didn't even know that sort of things existed. So I think it's also very important to see how we can increase advocacy to already existing programs rather than trying to use resources to create new ones. And sorry, I'm rambling, but one more thing is that talking about like the younger community, like these posters, obviously they have a very high language level to like have so many words on a single piece of paper. But I've seen that in elementary schools, they've been doing these things in during assemblies with like plays for younger lower middle school and elementary school students, where they have like basically actors come and they teach in like, they have a play about environmental safety that's more addressable to kids. And then at the end, they can talk about the sustainability, and it makes it a lot easier to understand when like kids see it as like this fun new thing. And I see that it's obviously a lot more impactful to hear your kids coming to talk to you about sustainability and how they say, I want to make our eco footprint friendly from a child rather than a piece of paper that's saying that you should do it.
Your voice is very important.
Here.
Representing.
Sit here and say nothing.
Your voice is very important. Thank you.
Well said, Preston.
And I just say ditto. Yeah.
Well, Stacy, when is the sustainability fair going to be at Pickering?
Well, thank you for asking. March 30th, Saturday, March 30th, we're hosting the second annual sustainability fair. So we're going to have 40+ vendors, lots of interaction, lots of activities, touch of trucks, hopefully some EVs on display. Yeah, lots, and sharing resources too about our sustainability electrification programs for lower income households. So yeah, lots of opportunity.
Well, yeah, and see, that's a great place to get the word out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you went to the first one last year. It was great. It was really well attended. I mean, it exceeded our expectations, right?
Yeah.
And wasn't the weather nice?
It was pouring rain. Yeah, we got about 700 people, so we're aiming for over
6. Yeah, it was just great. And there's all sorts of free swag, so if if you need to tempt your young kids to go, all sorts of good free swag. So, yeah.
Just a question, is the intention priority wise to conduct this outreach in order to engage and get input from vulnerable community members, or to kind of share the information and the resources that have already been gathered? I understand both are important, but I'm just curious, is there one that feels more important at this stage?
For this particular line of effort, it's the latter. It's sharing the information and the resources. We have a different project, Resilience Hubs, in which we are attempting to engage and do more outreach and feedback from community and community partners. Resilience Hubs, once they get off the ground and online, would be one of the resources that we would share through this line of effort with respect to what exists in the community. And one of why we are so interested in emphasizing the need to communicate with vulnerable populations in all forms of communications available is because we know that it is frontline communities and vulnerable populations who are disproportionately impacted. So emphasizing efforts through those strains, we endeavor to provide enough top cover that they are less impacted by the impacts that we know are coming.
Sure. Can you give some examples of things that are particularly important for vulnerable populations? And I'm sure you are thinking of particular communities within the Issaquah population that you want them to know. You want to make sure they know.
As in, yeah. So, for example, they are still small, but they exist. There are community gardens in Issaquah, and one of the negative impacts of climate change is disruptions to the food system. Because food security is already a problem. Through community gardens, through engagement with a local food economy, we hope to address both mitigation of the food miles and the carbon emissions that it takes, say, an avocado to travel to Issaquah, while also addressing food security. So basing a local food economy in more native, appropriate foods to the climate does both climate mitigation and adaptation. I hope that I answered your question.
Yeah, that's a helpful example. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm sure there's also other examples of, during extremely cold weather or during flood events, like these are resources, or during heat waves, these are community resources that could actually help save your life. Or things like that. I love the community garden tied to food security example. Thank you.
Like in a wildfire, here's how you would get out if you live in a
Right, here's the evacuation. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Have other East Side communities, are they in the process of doing a CVA?
Yes, yeah, they're becoming, I'd say, pretty standard companions to
Okay.
climate action plans. Redmond has completed theirs. Theirs focused very much on potential impacts to city infrastructure, where ours was a lot mostly community facing. And we did, I think, part of your question maybe was about engagement on the CVA with different community members. And we did tried to do pretty extensive outreach working with Hannah and Monica's team. So ours is a little bit more community facing. There's definitely some work that was done like on our sewer infrastructure, for example. So each city has taken a little bit different approach in terms of the focus of their CVA, but they are becoming more and more common. The state also passed legislation last year that climate resilience needs to be incorporated into all of our comprehensive plans. We're doing that this year. And so I think we'll start to see more and more cities looking at climate resilience as much as they've been looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Is there time for one more quick question?
Oh, that's good. Oh,
Yeah, hi, May.
I'll make it pretty quick here. No. Commissioner Jaime, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. I would say too, I think, as we kind of dive into the assessments, I was looking at the report. I think it'd probably be good to kind of name your literature, like review, like where you guys pulling that stuff from. Perhaps where the community input is. When I look at assessments, I'm always looking at it, who's doing the assessment. Sometimes that can feel like a very colonizer kind of mentality. Is like, how does that pull from our actual city's true voice? So I do like the fact that I saw social and health services being at the high. I was just wondering why there wouldn't be other things moving to the high, given that kind of like the lit review, the community input, the staff contribution. I think it's good to kind of reference certain items like that as we kind of pump up, as you mentioned, legislation is kind of, requiring cities to kind of develop infrastructure in regards to those plans. So I think it'd probably be helpful to kind of pull, so if folks are in this research mentality, they can kind of say, okay, I can see where they're grabbing their interpretation and build transparency to the community.
The resources behind the results.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, are you guys partnering up with emergency response?
Yes.
Okay, so because one can lead to the other, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Well, I have a question. I don't want to segue too much. For instance, during these really cold temperatures we recently came through, where did we tell vulnerable populations that were living outside where to go?
Through outreach, through individual outreach, one-on-one.
Say that again?
Through outreach, so we went to the locations that we know vulnerable populations were, since we've been interacting with them for a while. So we just one-on-one engaged with them for a few days before the severe weather came, and then we made sure that they had access to a shelter.
You made sure they had access, or you just told them where they could go and stuff like that?
We took them where they needed to go,
Oh.
depending on what there was available for them. Yes,
Oh.
and if they were able to take themselves, we also.
Okay, so what shelters did you take them to? Because I know the one in Snoqualmie has shut down now.
Most of the people were sheltered at Motel 6.
Okay.
And then some others were in Bellevue.
Okay.
At Porch Light. So usually when there's extreme weather, shelter's capacity can increase.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so they expanded some capacity. Yeah.
Yeah.
But relying on individual communication that's probably not very scalable, I would assume.
Not for a large, but then
Yeah.
that's why you do it based on individual needs. Also, going on social media, it's not for a vulnerable population who doesn't have access to internet
Right.
phones. It's also not, right? So then that's why we kind of individualize it based on needs, right? If it's a larger community communication that the entire community needs to know, then our communications team takes over and they use all the channels. If it's just a very vulnerable unhoused community members, then usually our homeless outreach team.
Issaquah has a radio station, right?
There's a, I don't know about radio. There's an emergency radio. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would think, I was just looking at a lot of to me, so much of this is all dependent on everyone having power and having access to the web to look something like what's going on, and looking something up. And in a true emergency, that's probably not necessarily something anyone could rely on.
Which is one of the reasons why preparation beforehand.
Yes.
Neighborhood, local, the environmental board use the language neighborhood watch groups, but really, I suppose it's neighborliness in a way that's not often practiced in the 21st century. But care for our literal neighbors in ways that are necessary in these new extreme weather environments.
Yeah,
And we didn't lose anybody, right? I mean, I know that there were 5 in King County that they think.
Yeah.
They didn't care that
Nobody
they
knows.
from here, yeah. Okay.
Booker, sorry, we had a few questions in between your questions. So did you want to bring up your?
It's covered.
Oh, great.
Yes, sorry. I was just going to talk about preparation, specifically what have you specifically done to reach? As a youth advisory board, we always, at least last year, we were talking about having environmental conferences, but two separate ones, one for high school, upper middle school, one for lower middle school, elementary, because it's really important that you make sure you change it, not just for the age of kids, but also for like the demographic, especially like each vulnerable demographic is going to need like a different way you're going to market it basically to them. And especially why it's important to teach these to children is not only for the prevention and like what I've already said, but also since they're going to be like, we're going to be the future generation, which means that putting into the head about sustainability topics, emergency preparedness now will help make sure that the adults of tomorrow, 2030 per se, are going to be even more prepared, and then it's going to do this almost rippling effect that eventually means that all kids are being taught about how to be sustainable and how to be ready in case there's like a wildfire or tsunami in the area. Thank you.
I believe we have gone over time. I want to honor your agenda for the rest of the evening.
Well, this was a great, robust discussion. Did you guys get what you needed?
Yes.
Be an adult in 22.
Yes. 18 and 27.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
What was the question?
My
I
question.
think there's one theme that I heard that is really important is, or an undercurrent of the theme is about trusted messengers. And I love that some of the examples of like community resources seem to me from my newbie perspective in this community to serve as those trusted messengers, especially to the vulnerable populations. It doesn't, all the good information posted to a website, you know, even if it is seen, might not really be digested and used. Yes, thinking back to some of the other wonderful presentations we had in November from community partner organizations that serve that role. So the community partner organizations are also a great way to help disseminate.
Yes. And we can't forget, I just have to mention this, the public library. That's such a trusted messenger. You know, when you walk in the foyer, you know, the bulletin boards, information on both sides. Yeah. And I mean, that's actually a place where people go to stay warm or cold. I mean, you know, if it's hot, if it's a hot summer day, they go there to cool down. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, should we move on to the next agenda item?
Sure.
You guys are welcome to stay, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Hannah's gonna present on the Human Services Strategic Plan update.
All right, I'll go ahead and transition us. Again, Stacy, Kathleen, thank you so much for giving us your insight. What a great presentation and great work that you all are doing. And commissioners, wow, great feedback. Kudos to Preston, I think had some really mind-blowing suggestions. So I just want to say thank you all for providing feedback. And also, I appreciate you all thinking about the Human Service Commission for this kind of feedback. They are an incredible group who really care about this community. So thank you again. Great job.
Thank you so much again for your input.
Good night.
Good luck. Have fun with the naked luck.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers the boy.
All right, so let me just share my screen here and get my presentation up. All right, commissioners, I'm going to shift our gear a little bit to human services related item. So I'm very excited this evening to present to you about our human services strategic plan, just update. So really this presentation is twofold. One, I want to give you just an update on how has the implementation been going in the last 2 years. I'll give some background information. And so I'd love to hear some feedback. The other piece of it is we've already done quite a few focus groups and received quite a few feedback from our community that I would love to bring to this presentation to share with you. And at the end, let's have a discussion if we're missing anything or if there's any other questions or discussions that you have. There we go. That's our discussion item. All right, so let me kind of back this up a little bit and talk more about the Human Services Strategic Plan and kind of get us orientated around what is our strategic plan and why does it matter to you all as commissioners? So the strategic plan was developed starting in 2021. Something uniquely about this strategic plan for the city is that we actually did it internally. You're looking at us. Which is not really typical for most jurisdictions. It's usually you contract it out. And so with that, there's a lot of value in what we, like you were talking about, that trusted messenger. We were able to build those relationships to do some community needs assessment, to learn from our community partners, from vulnerable populations. And from that community needs, I'm jumping a slide, I can tell. I'll get us back from there. But from our community needs assessment and engagement, we found out really what's going on with our community and what are the priority areas. And then from there, that is allowed us to create these focus areas and strategic actions. Sorry, I went out of order. With the intention for the strategic plan to be the roadmap for how we use our funding, how we move forward in our actions as a human services division, and to kind of inform not just the needs of the community, but also how do we move forward. So I think this slide is a little bit kind of helpful review of how the strategic plan is lined up. We talk about who we are as a city, our demographic. We talk about the purpose and some history context of the strategic plan. We talk about that needs assessment I talked about, and then we go a little bit deeper in these focus areas that I'll zoom in on a little bit. And again, this is our plan development. This is how it was processed. I really want to emphasize that we approach this with an equity lens, not just as a category, but as an entire process, right? It's important that we make sure we are addressing this. An example is we made sure that we did community needs assessment to folks who historically have not been represented, who don't have access to surveys and click answer survey questions. So we did intentional outreach to folks who are unhoused or non-English speakers with our translators. So that is an example. So from our community needs assessment, we found out these are our primary focus areas, which is housing continuum, physical and behavioral health, language access, and cultural specific services, and community resources. So where we are today is we're kind of at that halfway point where we wanted to basically have a review, just see how are we doing and check in with our community. In 2027, that's really when we're going to dive much deeper into how has the 5 years gone and what will the next 5 years look like. So I want to spend a little bit of time to let you all know what have we been doing for the last 2 years with the strategic plan and how we have done. Excuse me. So a couple of things that I will talk about that I'm very proud of our team is first off, our 2023-2024 Human Services grants. I'm looking at a few of you in the room who are part of that process, that grant application process in reviewing those and making some very difficult decisions. This last year, we had an increase cycle. We had an increase from $500,000 to $556,000+. And in that, we really took the approach of wanting to making sure that this money is moving the needle. So we decided to, as a commission, decided to fund less organizations, which is always hard, but provide larger grant sum amounts. And so that was a big part of this team looking into those big decisions. The other piece that I think was a huge success was our resource fairs. So some of you participated in those, and we had 2 of them one was Chalk Art, mostly focused on the youth and youth services. And we also had it during the Welcome Week. And those were great opportunities for not just our community members to learn about our wonderful providers, but for the providers to network, which was another need that we heard was opportunities to learn more about these resources. So we had over 50 providers participate in that, and an estimate of over 1,000 total residents participate in those resource fair events. The other thing that we are very proud of as a team is our emergency housing program. So one of the things that we recognize in the city of Issaquah is we didn't have a shelter. And many folks who lived here didn't want to leave Issaquah. And so as a city, we received approval back in July, so it's still pretty fresh, where we have a partnership with Motel 6 to have emergency house specialists work with unhoused folks in a transition for permanent housing. So that is a huge accomplishment as a city. In addition to that, we also have had our behavioral health and homeless outreach program, which started in 2021. That has now grown from 1 staff to 4 staff. We have a great dashboard that shows some of the work that's being done. So we're very thankful for that program and a lot of those partnerships that come out of it. The other thing that I think is wonderful these last couple of years is our connections to cultural groups. So part of our plan is to have cultural conversations or events and really to emphasize these groups in a culturally appropriate way that can celebrate our community members. And so in that, we've grown a lot of different relationships that has been, I think, very helpful to our division. And then also go ahead and switch us to the next slide. But also we have our virtual resource room. We partner with the community court. It's now open to the public where folks can access on a weekly basis some nonprofit providers. Here's some numbers that I think are, again, kind of highlight a little bit of what I was talking about in talking about the grants and the resource fairs, our expansion, and some of our providers.
I don't know how to read that one. Providers who expanded services to Issaquah.
Yeah, so that's basically saying one of our goals was to do outreach to new providers who have not provided services in Issaquah. And so this is saying that we went out and did outreach to what is that number? 18.
Okay, 18 new
providers.
6 out of 18. Let me just put the numbers there. So
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure how to read that, Jack. Sorry.
No, great question. Thanks for clarifying.
So 30% basically.
yeah, so 6 of the 18 providers that we engaged with
Are new to this.
Are new to the
Okay.
city and
Wow.
Okay.
expanded.
And when you say 44 new unhoused individuals, what's the total number of? So that was the unhoused population increased.
So basically that number is saying, so we had numbers from 2022.
Okay,
Which was a little bit over 100, I think 120 or so.
okay,
Unhoused residents that we had worked with in 2022.
okay,
And from there, in 2023, we worked with 44 new unhoused residents. And in 2022, we housed, I think there's around 22 residents. This is 8 residents.
Now, how many of those from 22 to 23 moved to a sustainable housing or
permanent.
permanent housing?
I would have to check our dashboard. I want to say around 31 at this point.
Okay. So you open.
But not all in this one.
Is that permanent housing subsidized or are they?
Most of them are.
They are.
Most of them are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the 44 new unhoused individuals served, are they served with temporary housing or are they served in other ways?
They're served in other ways. Yes. Yeah. So they're unhoused folks, which ultimately, right, we want to find housing for them, but we know there's many, many steps and services that they need to get there.
Yeah. Some are in temporary housing, some are in shelters, some are still on the streets, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, so lots to celebrate, lots to be thankful for this last year and kind of our halfway point. But of course, there's some challenges to what we see and what we do. Oh, go for it,
Go
maybe.
back one step. This 1234 number, I think is impressive.
Thank you. Yeah.
The residents.
It's also funny. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like, no, I promise you, I double check that is the right number. Yeah. So in 2023, we had emergency rental assistance in addition to human services grant funding. And we were able to work this many individuals And the intention of that emergency rental assistance was for primarily for BIPOC with young school-age children to prevent eviction for.
So those funds come from city funds, right? And what, I guess, the question is, what were those funds?
Yeah, they're 15, it's called 1590 tax dollars. So those are tax dollars that are intended for affordable housing.
Okay. Is it matched by federal or anything?
But to the 1234, is that only the additional emergency, or does that include the regular human services grants as well?
Oh, this one does include yes, this does include.
So most of the funds do come from the city's general fund, and then as Hannah mentioned, then some of the funds that we had in addition to the regular human services funds or for coming from, it's a sales tax revenue that historically has been used by counties. A couple of years ago, the city chose through exception, there was a timely exception where the city could choose to keep the money locally instead of giving them to a county. So a 0.1% of the sales tax remains in Issaquah and can be used for affordable housing services and capital projects. And so part of that was a little bit used for rental assistance.
So what is the difference between year to year as far as increase in funds available?
It depends on sales tax. But approximately, I believe for the last couple of years, the revenue for those funds, the revenue was around $1.7 million. But those funds mainly, primarily, the city intends to use them for affordable housing, but there are other projects, like in addition to rental assistance, the emergency housing program actually uses those funds. And then we have another department staff who is working on also actual projects for long-term affordable housing.
So this 1234 is not new
Residents. No, it's not new residents.
continue and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Ms. Huma, your hand is up. Feel free to chime in when you're ready.
Hi, so I see the first tile is the organizations that we've supplied funding for, and then you've got all these other great tiles with statistics. Do we know how that first tile kind of overlaps with the other tiles in that the 8 unhoused folks that are helped are funded by the city funding that I think it's Monica who was talking, mentioned, but do we know if that number might be like 10 or 11 through one of the organizations that was funded? Do we track that type of data?
We don't. As local providers or as a city working with local providers, we've identified that is very much a need and interest that there's a lot of overlapping, right? One client who goes to the food bank may also utilize ICF, who might utilize Issaquah, the human services. And so that actually is not tracked, but it's something that is being discussed of how can we?
How do we know the impact of the grants that are being awarded? Just that.
Such a great question, Huma. And actually, that's our vision and hope. And this year on our work plan, it is to explore a database system that would allow us not only to track our own data that we gather, since we are now providing direct provider of services, but how can we also integrate data from the organizations that we provide that would then essentially allow us to identify and really have unduplicated numbers and even just be able to track a person, kind of like that golden thread of seeing how many types of organizations and services they provide. So that's the vision and hope. I'm hoping we'll get there, but I think we are at least a few years. Kind of like that.
A lot of data to
years ahead of that dream and goal.
Well, this is Manny again. Again, working with the food bank, and since we subsidize them with the grants, right? This another great number I see, 5328, which is the unduplicated individuals. Is that correct? That's new, so it's 90% more this year.
From the previous year.
That's
Yeah.
the number.
Terrible.
insane.
Yeah, that's just,
Yeah,
wow.
that's the number we'd love to see go lower.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
That's the number you don't want to see high, that's for sure, but that is the reality.
Well,
And they do a great job serving. And part of the reason for the food bank to receive an increase is that they're also serving folks outside of Issaquah.
Yes.
And so.
There's one other thing. This is going way back and I'm sorry I didn't think of
That's
it.
great.
But the resource fairs, that's something that should be incorporated to the CBA. They should be a part of, that would be an off.
They have been actually.
They have,
Yes,
okay, good,
yes,
okay, good,
they
good,
have
good,
been.
Yeah, they had a,
They have great swag, so.
Oh, good. All right. Now I'm gonna start.
Yes.
Yeah. But to Huma's point, I think it is really important for us as commission to understand how did in 2023, how did the human services grant funding, what kind of needles were moved, what kind of accomplishments were done by our nonprofits. And that's actually will be something that will be provided more information to come as I'm pulling in all the data and information for the end of the year reports that I hope to provide for you all commissioners for next time. So yeah, so a great segue into that. Any other comments before I just move us forward to the challenges? All right. So one of our goals that we would love to see is this multi-resource center. So this is the vision where basically we can have all of our amazing nonprofits in one physical location. So if you're familiar with the Together Center model, it's similar to that in the sense of we want to make it accessible. However, in Issaquah, the space is limited. It just is. Real estate is expensive, and that we have not been able to identify a physical location. And so that is still in the works. And so we'll see where that can go, but that is a challenge we see. Another piece of it is our educational community events. So this is a more getting into our strategic actions. We really wanted to have these community-wide events that talked more about homelessness and poverty, or about medical prevention services, or community educational events for some providers. And we certainly had some wonderful ones throughout the year, but in that we recognized we really want to be able to partner with more of the experts to provide this educational event. And so there was just it takes a lot of planning in any sort of event. And so this year, my goal is really to be much more intentional with my outreach with our partners to see how we can collaborate with them in that. So that's something I hope to see improve for this next year. The other challenge that we are experiencing is really the question of what should the city's role be in our cultural events? We ultimately want to be in the background and elevate some voices within our community. And so making sure that we have those relationships in our community where we can provide funding and space and promotion so that way it can be culturally appropriately led. And so that's another area that we are working on this next year. As far as this next year, a few of our priorities, we are halfway, well, it started in July, so we are in the new year for our emergency housing program. So we are looking at long-term planning. What is that going to look like as a city, as well as really solidifying our behavioral health and homeless outreach program, as that's a growing program, really making that more continuous and solid. As well as Monica mentioned, our data tracking, making sure we have a good system in place, because data does tell a story for us as a city. So we want to make sure we can provide that information. All right, so that kind of is the the background of how our implementation is going. So now I just want to transition us into what has the focus groups look like these last couple months as we've been diving in deeper with some of our different providers. and the public and internal staff. So we had 4 focus groups. One was inviting our city departments, staff members. The other one we had was Nourishing Networks, which is a group where it's Issaquah local providers coming together to kind of share resources. So that's a great partnership. And then we had a couple open ones to the public where we had many other providers. We had folks from the Equity Board join us, and a few residents as well. So in that, we received similar feedback to our priority areas, and a little more specifically, that I just want to highlight, mostly because it's not that these weren't in the strategic plan, because they were, but there just were more specific call outs that I thought were interesting. So under each category that we already have, we learned more, just to talk about seniors being more isolated, youth needing more preventative services. There's the medical costs is very concerning. Rent increases are inflation. I mean, everything you can see. There's insecurity ultimately is growing. With cultural specific services, we're hearing a little bit more of an influx of refugee and immigrant era, where parents are ultimately either they're couch surfing or they need to have 2 jobs, creating some more barriers. And so again, ultimately this feedback was very similar to what we have heard. And then a few other topics, again, that were still within our parameters of our priority areas, but kind of call outs were just nonprofits really feeling it with their funding decreasing. Donations are down, funding's down, but of course the increase is up. And so that is a major concern. There was also more information about just domestic violence situations and incidences increasing. And then also hearing more so senior specific services and the needs for that. And then medical service providers, really finding partnerships with them. Do that. So ultimately, from our focus groups, our kind of 3 main takeaways here. So residents and our nonprofits, the needs continue to be the same. There's no major changes within our priority areas. And then I will say that kind of the positive thing that through these focus groups, as we got feedback and had discussion, is we found some different partnerships that I think will help strengthen some of our strategic actions. So that was a huge plus for us. And ultimately, what we currently heard and where we currently are at is very aligned with the Human Services Strategic Plan as is. And I will just say the reason why that's important for us, because we are about to enter in a new funding cycle where we're going to be reviewing our human services grant applications. And so we wanted to make sure that the priority areas, that nothing, I know, priority didn't change in any major capacity. So we can feel good about moving forward with that. So had our focus groups, coming to you all with this, and then really the ultimate goal is take this to our city council.
And just in a few days.
No, February.
February
27th, yeah, in a month. Hopefully not a few days. Okay, so any additional questions? I think we had some good discussion in the mix of the PowerPoint, but any other thoughts, feedback, questions?
I just want to say thank you for your hard work.
No.
The numbers look really good.
Yeah. I think the strategic plans made a lot of the commission work a lot easier and a lot of the focus. You know, you didn't have to stray away from a lot of things. And being here a few years now, the difference between when we started and after that has made a big difference. And I thank you guys.
Manny, thank you so much, and thank you for all your work. Actually, I want to share a fun fact story. Today, I was at a regional meeting with some other East Side cities, and the topic of the discussion was homelessness. But then at the end of the meeting, I had some some city staff approaching me saying that they just started the conversations with their commissioners to get ready for the funding cycle, and they don't have a needs assessment, they don't have a strategic plan. And so commissioners were asking for, we want data, we want information, what's going to be the focus? And they're just starting the discussions on what should their priorities be. And I was like, we have commission meeting tonight. We are great. We have our roadmap. So I was so relieved, and so thank you for that. And I think that makes our work easier now.
So did you tell
Trying
them,
to tell-
did you say?
I did say absolutely. I did say. And so yes, I'm sorry I did say that. But on my end, I wanted to say big thanks to Hannah for all her work, as one of her major roles is the implementation of the strategic plan. And I think I wanted to add just one sentence context for you commissioners. When we started the needs assessment back in 2021, and as Hannah said, it was internally done for many reasons. And it was also, this was the first human services strategic plan for our city. So very, very, very proud of it. But one of the reasons why we wanted to have and intentionally scheduled a 2-year plan pause and review was because we started in 2021, which, if you remember, it was right COVID, in the mixture of COVID. And so we didn't know we were in the middle, like, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 months. We should stop at least the 2 years to see. But it's great to see that the major themes are still there. And then if not, I think some of the conditions and some of the challenges that we heard in 2021, they just got worse in the same bucket now. So it's kind of like, I'm glad that we did, and I can't believe we are already looking back to say that was 3 years ago. It's like, yes.
Well, I think the COVID helped allow people to look out of the box.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we would have looked at it a whole different way if COVID didn't, occur.
Yes.
So, and again, I praise you guys for the job. Just reading it the first time was like, wow. This is what we needed.
It definitely brought light to the disparities that were already there, but then you could see that they were amplified, and now we know how we can address them now that it's gone.
Yeah, and like I said, thinking out of the box, it allows you to be okay to think out of the box instead of processes that we usually do.
So, great work everywhere.
Any other questions? Any other feedback?
I thought COVID was good.
Are we ready to move on to the next? Okay, so Monica is going to share with us 2025-26 Human Services Grant Supplemental.
Yeah, so such great segue. Thank you. And by the way, again, so good to be here with you, commissioners. I know that I'm not here at every meeting anymore since Hannah's doing such a wonderful job. But it's also nice to be with you here today. So good segue, as I shared earlier. So we are gearing up all for the 2025-2026 Human Services Grant application cycle. As a reminder for all of us, so I don't have a formal presentation. I thought we can just talk and questions and answers. But so as a refresher, or even new information for those of you who might have not been here, but we try to take a regional approach to the grant application process, really to make sure that this is an easier process for the nonprofit organizations who might provide services to residents in multiple cities, right? So we are part of this 15-city collaborative, and then we all work together in releasing the human services grant. So initially, organizations have just one application that they can send, and then send to all the cities, right? So because of that, though, we also create what we call a city supplemental. This is an opportunity for each of the cities to share something that's individual about their city, point organizations into the direction if the organizations or the city has priority areas, just like we have the strategic plan. And then also it's an opportunity to have any specific requirements that are specific just for that city. So kind of like that's what a supplemental is. We try because we are 15 cities, we try hard not to have special requirements, because then also it's going to defeat the purpose. If every city is going to have 2-3 special requirements, then why have the same application process, right? But it's really an opportunity to really highlight kind of like something unique about our city. So Hannah and I typically work together on putting together this supplemental, which as a draft, it is now in your packet. And I wanted to just call out a couple of things that we thought that are unique, and then we are going to call them out in the supplemental, and then also get your thoughts or concerns about that if you have. So when you have a moment, or maybe you already did, just go through it. It's really a 2-pager information. Just basically covers the fact that we as city staff, we do provide technical assistance. So Hannah's going to be available during this application process for any organization who's applying for funds to really contact Hannah and say, hey, I'm struggling how to fill out this. What do you mean by this? This is actually something unique that we do. Most of the cities are not allowed to do that, or they simply don't have the capacity to do it. Capacity is always an issue, but I think it really helps building that connection to organizations. So definitely we offer that. Then we go into just giving them some information about you as a commission, and then we also give them information about kind of like what we use as a criteria and about the strategic plan. One thing that, so then I'm not going to go into the strategic plan because you're familiar and you're going to hear us more about that. But one thing that we are going to try for the first time this year, and we are going to include it in the supplemental. Why is it? I don't see it here.
I think I'm missing a page right here.
Oh, I'm missing. Oh, it's more than it's 2 pages. We have 3 pages. Like, right. I was so proud that we are only on 2 pages. Never mind. So what we are going to try to do this year that's unique for the first time is to provide an opportunity for advanced payments for organizations. So historically, because we are, I almost said a nonprofit entity, because we are a government entity, we need to abide by the use of public funds. It's a state regulations. And that does not allow us to pay organizations in advance of providing services. So all of our contracts and all of our grants have been on a reimbursement model in the past. However, after hearing more feedback from regional entities and from nonprofits, really this is a struggle, especially for small nonprofit organizations who have a cash flow problem. It's hard for us to ask them to serve, residents for entire quarter for 3 months and then get reimbursed for their services only after that, which that has been our process. So we were able to engage with our city attorney and look into regulations, and our wonderful city attorney was able to find exceptions to where if we serve low-income populations or folks with disabilities, so those organizations, we are able to provide advanced funding. And so we are creating a program to where we are going to be able to propose for organizations that feel that they need and have a cash flow issue, they can opt in and request that we provide up to 50% of their grants in advance.
But they would still have the same reporting protocol.
They have the same reporting protocol. It's just they're going to be able to get the money in January to start services rather than April, as it has been historically. So,
I can see how that would work for especially smaller
yes.
companies, because your cash flow is, I need this, but how am I going to get it if I don't have it? And
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
vicious cycle.
Yes. So that's, I think, our major change in terms of making it easy for organizations. And so we wanted to let them know in advance. But other than that, I think kind of like really, like I said, the supplemental is just a way for us to share some information about our city with the nonprofits. And so if you have any questions, or as you read through it, if you didn't already and you have some other ideas, please let us know. This is due for us at the end of February or mid-February.
Yeah.
So we still have though a few weeks if you would like to, or if you have ideas, but
When does this go out?
mid-February, because the grants are released at the end of February. Beginning of March.
March 4th.
Can you tell I'm not so?
Yeah.
It's so nice to
Got a lot
have
of other
them.
things going on now. Yes.
If I may suggest, I don't know if you've talked to Trish, we went through the process twice now, I guess. And, some of the processes that Trish brought in was amazing. So I don't know if, and.
For the review
Yeah,
process,
that's very
yes.
kind of you. I just, for the others that weren't around, I just did a spreadsheet that really worked well for the three of us. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and definitely we will start on that
Yeah.
before, sometimes in March, April.
Yeah, in March, we'll be talking more as a group of like, how do we want to approach the review process and kind of make sure that we're all aligned on that. So that will be a really great time for us to kind of dig deeper. We can talk more about that as it gets closer. That'd be great. Thanks, Manny.
I wonder if that advanced payment paragraph will generate a lot of,
Interest,
Yeah.
we thought about that
Yeah.
as well, yes. It's
Is there a lot of hoops to jump through to get that, or
if it was a lot of.
is there a lot of hoops to jump through?
No, we'll just include it in the contract. So it'll just be a part of like what the typical process of contract signing, and they'll just, what we call opt into it. I think the requirement is they'll just have to prove that the funds are going to low income or people with disabilities.
A
So,
certain percentage.
But yeah, it's not, yeah, as long as they serve, but all of the nonprofits,
Yeah.
organizations, they do serve folks for
Yeah.
low income.
Yeah.
Or so it's like, it's,
Yeah. it should be very low barrier access to advance payments for nonprofits.
Yeah.
We are taking away all the hoops for them to make it as easy as possible. Yeah. Very excited for it.
Because it's not the big nonprofits that have the problem.
right, yes, it's
Yeah.
not the big nonprofits.
But like we call it kind of our grassroots, right? Like new organizations, like this can be a very helpful thing to be able to provide. And I'll just add the other reason we decided 50% is, our grant sizes are fairly small in comparison. So really to make an impact, it didn't make sense to say 25%, but 50% felt like we were being conservative to making sure that we're making sure they can be successful, and then but then helpful as well. So
And then you can revisit that to see how it helps.
Exactly.
yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say we've already started technical assistance, which is so great to hear that organizations are reaching out for help early on. And
Yeah.
That's a great question.
What
Mhm.
kinds of questions? Are there patterns?
I have 2 scheduled tomorrow and next week, so I'll let you know. But I think it's just it's some technical support of like, how do I access the login information? How do I answer these questions, or not answer these questions, but how do I approach it that way? But taking the opportunity to emphasize what's important to Issaquah. And the nice thing is that it will always point it back to our strategic plan.
But also, Rucker, in the past, once the application process was open and we provided technical assistance, a lot of the questions were about either the budget, how to fill out the budget and what to put for services, and kind of like how to answer certain questions. Because we do ask questions about accessibility, we ask questions about cultural approach, and so sometimes, it's very clear for certain cultural groups and organizations, and some larger organizations, but then for some others it's not very clear because they say, well, we have this one staff who speaks this language, is this, so sometimes we have also those kind of questions that, But budget questions, we have quite a few.
Yeah, but the reality is I want them to call me. It's a great opportunity to help them feel like they can be successful in it.
Are we ready to move on? Okay, let me see, Monica, you're on again. Commission 2024 draft work plan.
Yes. I'm so grateful that Hannah just gave me a few things to do, so I'm not quiet all day. I couldn't keep quiet anyway, probably. So another item that's probably just, this is not news for you, giving you a little bit of information on the 2024 work plan. I know that you and Hannah worked on it actually in November, I believe, or October. You had viewed and worked together on a draft 2024 work plan. Since then, our city is trying to transition to a format that is more cohesive to all boards and commissions to really make it more user-friendly from the resident's point of view. So then if a resident is curious and interested in seeing all these boards and commissions and what they are working on, they have one format that's familiar for what work plans look like. So really our work and bringing this to you is just to show you, and again, you have it in your packet, just the different formats that we are trying to pilot as a city that's more cohesive and similar, like for all boards and commissions. So the information is not new for you there, but really just a few highlights. As you know, we just talked all evening, most of your year in 2024 will be taken by the Human Services grant application review and making recommendations to the mayor and city council by the end of the summer. Then also a good part of our work as city staff, and then a couple of you are going to be part of this. It's also recruitment for any new commissioners. If we have any new commissioners who are ending their term and no longer interested in continuing. So a little bit of that. Hannah and I will bring you updates on the Human Services plan implementation. I'm going to bring you updates on any other Human Services division related items from probably we are going to come back to you a couple of times related on items related to the emergency housing program, as that is a pilot ending at the end of the year. And we are going to work with City Council later this year to identify long-term plans. So we are going to bring that item to you as well. We are going to bring you updates and questions related to, as Hannah mentioned earlier, the growing behavioral health and homeless outreach program that it's hopefully transitioning into a crisis response program. So we are going to talk a little bit more about that and bring that to you. So you are going to be busy as a commission. But certainly if you have any questions about any of the items, or if any, we definitely would love to hear feedback. You're going to have this probably attached to each of your agenda as you go through the year, but would love to have feedback as, is this user friendly? Is this clear? Is this easy to follow? Should we continue to use it as a city? Right now, the Human Services Commission, along with the Equity Board and the Environmental Board, I think are the three. I want to say that maybe there's a fourth board that's using this as a pilot and trying to pilot this format. To see if we want to expand it to the entire city. But
So is there a master calendar that has all these for the equity board and it has?
Oh my God.
So pretty much that is the intent, to have it kind of like as a master calendar for that. But for now, I think everybody's going to try to use at least the same template. So it's going to be easy posted and then easy for residents if they want to say, oh, this is the work plan, and be able to follow it.
Very practical.
Yes.
And at a glance, it's very visually digestible.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So I think that's all I had. We had.
Okay, okay, chair and commissioner reports. Well, I don't really have a report per usual, but I do have a question. Okay, so when do we start interviewing for new commissioners?
March. We are gonna do interviews in March.
Okay.
How many openings are there?
We currently have one vacant position. And I have not talked to anybody to see if anybody plans to be leaving. We do have an alternate Rucker, so Rucker can consider, well, no, the vacant isn't, the vacant position is an alternate.
So you are in the process of receiving applications?
Not
It's
yet.
not open quite yet.
Not yet, okay.
Yeah. In February, we'll start recruiting for the vacant position.
Is that when the city just does a general? Okay, I couldn't remember. It's on February sometime. Okay,
Yeah.
that was just that was my question.
Sorry,
And does anybody have any?
Yeah, is there applications for civic commissions or events, or does it just say, I'm interested, or does someone
You can, when you apply, you can check the, like, your first priority, your second priority, third priority, and then you end up being interviewed for all.
You don't remember when you applied?
It's been so long.
Oh, man.
I had to interview you for your, this term. It was an interview.
Oh, yeah,
It was a check-in to see.
I've watched all that movie. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
So I think that is a good segue if commissioners, if anybody is in a position or needs to transition out or step away from their current term, please have a conversation with me offline and we can plan accordingly. So I really hope that you all stay here for this next year of work, but of course, I know life happens.
Well, and then there's, Kuma's the only one that terms out, so she needs to reapply. And she probably already knows that, right?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Thanks for bringing me up.
Yeah, and of course, we want you to reapply.
I will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, he might be happy to reconnect with you after this.
Yeah, I'd love to keep going.
So this is anybody's opportunity to speak up about, you're next. Okay, you're next, but any of these big people, anything you guys wanna?
You're not getting rid of me till I'm 18.
Then you're coming back.
Yeah, and then I can come back.
Anything you guys wanna bring up about anything, hopefully human services related? Going once, going twice. Okay, your turn, Preston.
Yep, it's my turn. Okay, let's see. So one thing I've noticed through all of these meetings is that our teen advocacy board has been very aligned with the human services board. So as a leader this year and hopefully applying to be a leader next year, I want to make sure that we have more communication between each other since we have very similar ideals. So for example, every single year we do voting in our teen advocacy section. So every year our agenda changes depending on what the people want. So this year, our three were behavioral health, racism awareness, and career preparedness. So that addresses like most of the priorities of this board: behavioral health services for youth, role in cultural events, educational community events. And for nonprofit needs, we've held, I think, 2 or 3 internal ones just for YAB, where we did a toy drive, a clothing drive, and a hygiene drive, and that all of that went to pretty sure the Issaquah food bank. So yay for us. We did things. And yeah, and then on our teen action side, we're addressing increasing the amount of awareness and connection in the community. So recently we had our Harry Potter night, which was approximately 50 kids that came just to celebrate, talk to each other about their love of Harry Potter.
That's awesome.
So obviously our teen action events are a little more easygoing. We have a dodgeball and donuts coming, science symposium, which is going to be a joint group event, hopefully. But overall, these events are just going to increase the community, especially in the youth. And then moving on to our teen advocacy, we're starting our usual big event, which is State of Mind, one of our speakers being Rucker.
Woo!
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm leading it, actually. So we're adjusting.
This is me ready.
Yeah, I'm leading. So we're expecting approximately 80 groups, and also talking about like addressing different groups. We're splitting parents and youth into 2 separate areas. So that means that we're going to be addressing the teens and the adults separately. I think we're going to give you a follow-up email on how to do that. But basically doing the 2 separate ways so that you find a pathway to like help engage children or teenagers and help engage adults of these teenagers. So I think our topics this year are going to be depression, anxiety, burnout, and then interactive events to make sure that people are more engaged would be, we're doing mindfulness yoga and art therapy. Yes. And then for our racism awareness, this is planned to be a long-term event. So we're going to be pushing this off until approximately fall of next year. But we're trying to make sure that we address all the cultural groups. So it originally started as an idea for just addressing people of color. However, we're, but also because I'm so advocacy, we're addressing BIPOC community, but also addressing disability, people with disabilities and women and other LGBTQIA plus community, so that we make sure that every single person, so this isn't just a racism conference anymore, it would be more of a almost like a full, I don't know how to explain it, but like a full conference that is about inequalities and how you can basically help these inequalities. And then of course we have our career fair, which isn't going, we're planning, I'm pretty sure, to be April or May. And this is going to obviously be important because we're building future generations, making people think about it. And we're specifically aiming to talk other than just the college approach. So we're going to get business people from the Issaquah community to talk about their experience of starting businesses, trade school jobs, hopefully just getting multiple different perspectives and teaching kids that four-year colleges aren't always the direct pathway and the only choice for them, so that they know that there's multiple different pathways they can do to get future jobs and do what they want and be happy.
Great. It's really good.
Yeah. I think, oh yeah, and State of Mind is March 9th from 2 to 4 o'clock. If you would like to come.
I've gone in years past. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
This year is supposed to be really good because we have a lot of good leadership and we have really good speakers planned.
Just putting it on the calendars.
I didn't catch what is Rutgers speaking on.
I think Rutgers speaking on burnout, right?
Yeah, I think I was, I'll check my email, but
Yeah, we're sending that. Yeah.
Confirmation.
Possibility of the cross section between burnout and kind of climate change, environmental.
Yeah.
Anxiety, et cetera. So I'll be curious if that's still.
I think we're still trying to implement that in.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for all the work. Wow.
Yes.
Great job.
Nice presentation.
Thank you for keeping us updated.
How many hours of the day do you have?
Doesn't it make you feel that we have hope in the next generation?
Preston, the only thing I'll just say is, I would love any information, like if you guys are posting on your website or a flyer or anything, so I can help promote it within the city.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I think we're going to get a flyer for State of Mind out like really soon, like within a couple weeks. So I can definitely send that to you once I got it.
I love that. Thank you.
Okay, we're already a little bit over time because we're having such a great time. Staff report.
I'll keep it brief. We are going to council on the 27th to do what we did here, similar. And then the other thing is February 1st is Black History Month. And so we will be celebrating as a city February 24th through the 25th with a art gallery up in our community center. There'll be hot beverages, there'll be food. So it should be, and dessert. That's what it'll be. And more information to come. It's not quite actually on our website, but you'll be seeing more promotion as it gets a little bit closer soon. So, excited for that. And that's my report.
Okay, anything for the good of the order?
The final thing I would like to share, commissioners, before we adjourn is, I mentioned this before, but I will be out for the February meeting, but to continue our momentum forward, our lovely leader, Monica, will be taken over. And so she'll be able to give an update on Human Services Division. And I'm also prepping some 2023 outcomes from our Human Services partners. So more to come, but I will miss you all. I will be in Florida in Disney World with my family.
Oh, my.
So I will miss
She's
you.
not gonna miss you.
I will.
You will be so happy.
We can do
to
it
see
virtual.
us. Really natural. You will be so happy to see us. I hope you survive.
If you want to join us, you can. So just all, I will be gone, but Monica, you'll be in good hands.
You know, for a very brief moment there,
No,
at the very beginning, you know what I thought you were gonna say? Another pregnancy.
where's the recording? No, I am not pregnant.
Disney World, Ratatouille.
Yes, Ratatouille is the best.
So,
So are we good to adjourn?
Ratatouille. Oh,
Yes.
All right.
Love that.
Okay,
And I don't
well, you
think-
already stopped the recording, right?
No.
No, I
I think it is